Welcome, 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 everybody. This is, I think, our second, or I think it's our first, I think it's our first open house this year, our first speakers masterclass this year, which is pretty exciting. I try to do them reasonably often, but life has gotten in the way recently, so we're not doing them that often right now, but I hope to do at least one a quarter moving forward, so it's lovely to see you all here. You are in no obligation to turn your camera on when you're not speaking. Obviously, when you are speaking, if you don't want to turn your camera on, there's going to be a limit to how much feedback I can give you. But if you don't want to turn your camera on the rest of the time, you absolutely don't need to. I understand Zoom fatigue. That said, because we do have speakers in the event, it's always nice to see people's faces. So if you are feeling generous and you wouldn't mind turning your camera on so that people can see you while they're talking to you, that would be lovely as well. So I've got to get through some housekeeping here. If you wouldn't mind telling us, who you are and where you're from in the chat, that would be great. Let us know what you're looking forward to learning as well. That would be wonderful, just so that I can make sure that I'm answering everyone's questions. So the idea of this masterclass is we're going to do kind of like bookend, like introductions and a little bit of training. And then within the event, we're going to do one speaker. So they get 5 minutes to speak, 5 minutes of feedback if you want it. It's totally optional. So I will ask you if you want feedback from me. And then we'll have a question. So it'll be speaker, question, speaker, question. Just kind of keeps things exciting and interesting. We're not being live streamed today because there was more technical issues, but there will be a replay available on my YouTube channel. And also, I do make the promise that I will give everyone their 5-minute speech if they want it, if you want to use it for your social media. I'm probably just going to do that automatically, so you don't need to ask about that. What else do I need to tell you? Yeah, so this is essentially just a place to sandbox. This isn't necessarily a performance space. You can use it as such if you like, but my idea with this masterclass is a lot of speakers don't have a place to practice. Now, I do offer practice labs to the members in my membership portal, my monthly membership portal, but if you're not part of my monthly membership, then you don't get that. So I wanted to offer something to the public where they have a space to practice. You get a space to try ideas. It's reasonably safe. I'm very gentle with my feedback. And I will also always make sure that I give you something that will help you grow. So as a speaker, you'll always have a next step, which I think is very important. We're just going to do introductions while we wait for a couple more folks to trundle in here. So Max, I'm going to ask you to keep your eye on the waiting room, just in case anyone is wandering in a little late. And I'm going to start with the introductions. So my name is Danielle Benzon. I am your host for this evening. I am your vocal and speaking coach for this evening. It's my evening. It might not be your evening. It might be your daytime. Today, I'm currently in South Africa. I usually am based in Vancouver, Canada, but I'm on a tour around the world visiting family. So I'm in South Africa right now. And just to tell you a little bit about me, I guess, I trained as a theater actor for almost 2 decades. And everything that I learned there was so important, not just for being on stage and being an actor and, learning how to do all that stage stuff, but also just for human experience, just for communication, for leadership skills, for being clear in my communication. And so when I decided not to become a career actor, this was kind of the thing that I fell into, because I want to bring those skills to other people, because I think everyone should deserve some training in how to communicate, how to be more expressive, and how to really be who they are as loudly and joyfully as possible. So that's what I do. I'm going to just go around and I'm going to pick on you and ask you to introduce yourself. So Clara, would you mind letting us know who you are and what you're looking for today? Oh, you're on mute, love. You're on mute. We cannot hear you.
Yes, I have to unmute my microphone as well. So, hello everyone. My name is Clara White. I'm an economist and a political scientist. I'm trained by the Paris Institute of Political Studies, which is a reference in France. I have 25 years of international experience, mainly in Northern, Central, and Southern America. And I am also trained now in science, having completed over 120 university credit, graduate and undergraduate. I'm training with Danielle on how to do public speaking, because first of all, I need to make presentations sometimes as a part of my research as a scientist, and also because I'm interested in doing politics and getting into politics. As you know, there are upcoming elections in Canada in 2025. And so I'm hoping I can get into the process and hopefully win. So I need that training. Thank you so much, Danielle. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon.
That's news to me. That's exciting, Clara. That's very exciting. Congratulations. Steve, would you mind introducing yourself, telling us who you are and what you're looking for today?
Yes, absolutely. My name is Steve Malachek. I'm based in Dallas, Texas. I come from the oil and gas industry. I'm a geophysicist by background, geologist, geophysicist, very much a technical background. In recent years, I've sort of transitioned from oil and gas into helping organizations with water development in developing countries, with improving access to groundwater drilling wells, that type of thing. So communicating to a different sort of audience in recent years. And I think the biggest challenge I've had, I'm actually in Toastmasters, a speaking organization that many of you have probably heard of, which is helping me in organizing speeches and delivering in a coherent, concise way. But I think the biggest thing that I'm after through this program that Danielle offers is a little bit more of the, I don't know, I guess the human connection part of it, the expressiveness, the authenticity, the being able to really connect with the audience, being able to be a much more genuine communicator rather than this standoffish sort of technical stance that I sometimes fall into. So that's what I'm after, and always benefit from having feedback in that way. So thank you.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Steve. And Margaret, are you able to turn on your camera just to chat to us? You can turn it off again afterwards. But are you able to turn on your camera to introduce yourself?
Because I'm eating right now, so I don't want to turn on my camera. It is noontime in California, so I'm sorry. I don't want to show you guys I'm eating.
Could you just take 30 seconds to let us know who you are?
Yeah, I'm from Sacramento, California, and I wanted to help single women empty nested with money to leave a legacy for their children. So I'm going to turn off my camera and
no
finish
problem.
eating. Okay.
We totally understand. I don't like eating in front of people either. It's absolutely fine. And Max, I'm going to ask you I was going to say unmute your camera, but that's obviously wrong. Turn on your camera and tell us a little bit about you and how you found yourself here. Put you on the spot.
Well, it's your fault I'm here.
Yeah.
Well, we've been friends a while, and I am weirdly, I don't know, I like to organize things and turn chaos into like order, and so now I'm doing that for you, and love it.
So Max just started as my VA. She's, well, virtual. We're not virtual right now. We're in the same city, but we will be virtual as I move around the world. And she's amazing. She's the most organized person I've ever met in my life. You just look at her craft supplies and you go, wow. So that was how I knew you were perfect foil for me, because I'm quite chaotic. So Max is here to keep me in line, keep me organized and getting things done on time. So that's very exciting. I'm very glad to have you here, Max. And so if you have any technical questions or that kind of thing, please direct those to Max, because obviously I will be coaching today. So you can just write Max in the chat, or message her directly. Thank you so much for introducing yourself, Max. Alrighty, I think we can just get started here. I don't see any reason not to. Just a few little notes, and some of you, I'm preaching to the choir because you know this already, but it's always nice to start with just how to show up as your best on camera. So I believe that a background isn't that important. You know, you could have a white background behind you and it wouldn't really matter. If you are going to have things behind you, I always prefer balance over symmetry. You know, you see those people who they've got like a painting coming out of their head, and it just looks a little bit strange if everything's exactly the same on either side. So I always prefer to go for balance over symmetry. Like right now, I've got a bit more space over here than I'd love to have a nice tall plant here, but I don't have one. So, you know, you want to be taking up most of your frame. Ideally, you don't want more than a kind of flat hand above your head, especially in a close up like this. If you were quite a bit further away, then I would say you could have a bit more space above your head. But the rule, according to my videographer friend, is that your eyes are at the 1/3 mark. So 1/3 down, that's where your eyes are. And that's true no matter how far away or how close to your camera you are. So that's a nice way of kind of knowing where I'm supposed to be on the screen, because we don't want to be these little heads at the bottom, unless we're trying not to show our food. That's a different thing. What else? We need to be lit. So I've got a light kind of above. I've got a fluorescent light above in front of me, but you can also have one light on either side. Natural light is fantastic as well, as long as you're filming during the day. Try not to have the light like directly above you, because then you're going to get some strange shadows. But it is always nice to have it kind of above and forward, so that it's kind of a 45-degree angle down. What else do we need to say? Your camera is about eye level plus an inch. We're taking up most of the space of our frame. And yeah, I mean, as long as we can hear you and we can see you, I wouldn't worry too much about backgrounds. I try to keep them as kind of plain and simple as possible. If you have a lot of light behind you, that might be a little bit of a challenge, and you may have to light your face quite strongly in order to compensate for the light behind you. But other than that, I can't think of anything off the top of my head that might be useful to showing up as your best self on camera. So that's just a little tip to get us started. And Clara, you were the first to sign on, so would you like to be the first to speak?
Okay.
Fantastic. What are we working on today?
So, you know, I've been preparing some presentations for my little organization. So I'm proposing to try and summarize one of those presentations and
in 5 minutes.
Present it.
or just get as far as you can in 5 minutes, and that's absolutely fine.
Exactly. You can just cut me when it's over.
For sure. And what type of feedback are you looking for? I like to ask. Clara is one of the people who comes to my practice lab. So in practice lab, we can get very detailed in our feedback. And in this kind of space, I want to make sure it's a mixed group. So I want to just make sure, what type of feedback are you looking for, Clara?
You know, the way I'm delivering the message and whether it's okay or.
Okay. So pretty much everything. You're a 10 for feedback. Okay, fantastic. Just to help you with your your internet connection, I'm going to turn off my camera, and I'm actually going to ask Steve to turn off his camera as well, just so that you have less bandwidth, so that your internet is a little bit more stable while you speak. Do you have any questions before you get started? You good? You good to start? I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to start a count.
Yes, I am.
Timer for 5 minutes, and then we'll have an option for 5 minutes feedback afterwards. Whenever you are ready, my dear.
So hello, everyone. My name is Clara White. I'm an economist and a political scientist, and I work as an independent researcher with an interdisciplinary and intercultural perspective. So I created a tiny organization named Padea Mundi, which is a think tank. So that's a group of reflection on public policies. And let me give you a little bit of background about Padea Mundi, why I came to create it. So I realized that our societies are currently facing unprecedented challenges, ranging from the opioid crisis to the climate crisis, from the loneliness crisis to repeated financial and socio-economic crisis. So I was wondering, what can I do about it? And how could I help sort out those issues? And that's when I came down with Padea Mundi. Because if we are to set our societies back on a path of positive development and flourishing, we urgently need to rethink our philosophical and ethical basis and to reshuffle our worldview so as to make sense of the world again, and most importantly, come down with novel and innovative economic and political models to be applied in public policies for our society. So Padea Mundi was created with a mission, precisely to craft and promote public policies and interventions relying on the biophilic ethics that puts the well-being of human and living beings at the forefront of every decisions that we take. At Padea Mundi, we envision a world where all human and living beings can bloom and thrive. So I just mentioned that at Padea Mundi, we apply a biophilic ethics in everything that we do. What is the biophilic ethics exactly, you may ask? So it's a concept that is progressively being developed by many thinkers, like, for example, psychoanalyst Erich Fromm, biologist E.O. Wilson, or even NASA scientist James Lovelock. In the words of Fromm, biophilia is the passionate love of life and all that is alive. It is the wish to further growth, whether in a person, a plant, an idea, or a social group. It implies that all human and living beings have the same nature, as demonstrated by our common genetic code, and as such have an equal right to be respected, loved, and supported so they can live their best possible lives and flourish. As E.O. Wilson put it, the phylogenetic continuity of life with humanity seems an adequate reason by itself to tolerate the continued existence of apes and other organisms. This does not diminish humanity. It raises the status of non-human creatures. So at Padea Mundi, we believe that we are at a crucial point in time during which such ethics has become a requirement if we are to avoid destroying ourselves with the novel technologies that we now have at hand and that are so powerful, from genomics to nanotechnologies or artificial intelligence. For this reason, outside of our philosophy leads us to apply a series of values in everything that we do. Human beings or other living beings. Ahimsa, which is the principle of non-violence in some Asian philosophies like Hinduism. That's not hurting life. Creativity, that's encouraging novel and groundbreaking ideas. Freedom, that's sustaining free will and self-determination in all living beings. And finally, we always adopt a complexity standpoint in when doing our research and trying to craft novel to drive our societies into the ecological transition. So this complexity outlook implies adopting an interdisciplinary and intercultural approach when looking at any issues that we have to tackle. So relying on our mission, vision, and values, we ambition to progressively develop a complete novel philosophical framework that shall reset the relations between all human beings, as well as between humankind and the rest of life on Earth. We also intend to come down with novel policy models and tools so as to take our societies smoothly through the ecological transition, hence putting them back on a path of flourishing for all living beings. As James Lovelock put it, working on such a novel framework and on such novel tools might progressively turn humankind into what he called the ethical conscious of our planet, that is the custodian of all life, that from a philosophical standpoint, it is an alternative, quote, it is an alternative to that pessimistic view which sees nature as a primitive force to be subdued and conquered. It is also an alternative to that equally depressing picture of our planet as a demented spaceship forever traveling, driverless and purposeless around an inner circle of the sun. So it is with this positive, optimistic, humanistic, biophilic mindset that we set ourselves at creating a better future for all human beings, all living beings, and hopefully for all our co-citizens in Canada. If you would like to learn more, do not hesitate to send me an email at the address at the bottom of the screen next to my name. Thank you so much.
Very nice. And so close to 5 minutes. I was waiting for a perfect ending and then you ended. So very nice. How did that feel, Clara? How did it feel doing that?
Great. Okay. As I said, I tried to summarize the PowerPoint.
You did a good job. You took a 10 minute and you put it down to 5 minutes. It's very nice. And you still hit all the points, I think, which is always a good exercise, because sometimes we think we need a certain amount of time, and then when we're forced to bring it down, we're like, oh, actually I didn't need some of that stuff. So it's a good exercise to play with as well, especially because I know you're creating videos and it's always interesting and it's always different. You know, every video channel is different on how many minutes people will watch. Like sometimes they'll click on something as long as it's under 10 minutes. Sometimes it has to be under 5 minutes, depending on the person. So as you learn your users, you will learn what the ideal length of video is as well. So yeah, I loved it. I thought you're so passionate, and that really comes through. I've been thinking, because you and I were speaking recently about the challenge that you have to be close enough to your computer to read your notes and to click your PowerPoint, but I want to see your hands moving. I've been thinking about this, and I have a bit of a solution, because you use your hands beautifully. And I did find today, and I think maybe it's because we can't see all of you. I think that's possibly what brings your shoulders in, because you're kind of like leaning forward and trying to, so you speak from your shoulders a little bit. So remembering to kind of let those shoulders be. So you're gesturing from the heart. You're not kind of jumping up in your chair, but you're gesturing from the heart, and it's more of an open gesture. Then the challenge becomes your hands are coming in and out of frame because you're so close, because you need to be, because you're on a laptop. Technology is what it is. We're not going to be able to change it. I have a similar issue at the moment. And so what I do is, when I'm using my hands, I try and keep them, you have to be aware of your frame a little bit. I try and keep them up and in the frame for a little while. And then when I bring them down, I leave them down for a little while. So even if I'm speaking with my hands, which I can still speak with my hands, they're out of frame. And then when I bring them up in frame, they stay in frame for a while, because it's this that gets frustrating for the audience, is that they see little bits of hands and then they disappear all the time. So getting into the habit of being like, okay, my hands are in frame, they're up, I'm using them, and people can see them. And then I can still use them down here, but when they're out of frame, to make sure they're completely out of frame. And so that's just a technical habit that's very much, like an actor hitting their mark so they can be in the light. It's that kind of thing. But it will help if you need to keep in this frame. It's just something I thought of. Something you said right at the beginning, which is the only word choice feedback I'm going to give you. I would recommend you don't call it a tiny organization. You don't want to put yourself down. You can just say, I started an organization. You don't need to say that it's tiny. You don't want to invite people to look down on you. You want to be strong. You don't have to be like, oh, this amazing, huge organization. You don't have to say that, but just take the diminutive word out. What else have I got? Yeah, I love your passion. Your notes, you were looking at your notes a lot. And that meant that we got robbed of some of the eye contact. So I know that this time you were trying to kind of look through your notes and decide what to say and what not to say. Getting in the habit of looking at your notes and then looking up and speaking is a good habit to start, because then at least when you're speaking, we have your eyes. So you look down at your notes, not speaking at this point, and then you look up and speak. That is at least better. Or if you could have your notes closer to your camera, potentially, so that you're not looking down so much. There are a few kind of what I do is I open up a Word document. I know you're using PowerPoint, but I open up a Word document with my notes and I put it right at the top of my screen because I know that my lens is right there at the top of my screen. So I put my notes right underneath it so that if I do have to look at my notes, I don't have to look all the way down. It's just a tiny little look. And the last thing I wanted to say is I loved, you did a few kind of question titles. So you cut up your content by saying, you know, you were talking about biophilia and then you said, so what is biophilia anyway? Let me explain it. And those kind of questions, they're not real questions, they're almost rhetorical questions, but they're really great to create like a heading, you know? So it's almost like a chapter title or something in your, it breaks up your speech really nicely and it makes it a lot easier for us to understand. So those question titles, the more you can do those, the better, because they really help you. They help you and they help us kind of anchor to the content. Yeah, I thought it was very conversational. I could hear your passion in it, but it was also, you know, it is also elevated. It's not, you're not speaking down to the lowest, you're not speaking to the lowest common denominator. You are still explaining quite complex concepts, but you were doing it in a way that I think was quite accessible. So well done.
Thank you, Danielle.
Do you have any questions on that feedback, Clara?
Not for today. Thank you.
Okay, great. Next time. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So, so we're going to go to a question. Welcome, Adam. Hello, hello. We're just alternating speakers and questions. So if you have a question, you can throw it in the chat. If you'd like to be a speaker, you can throw it in the chat and Max will sort you out. I'm just going to go and look for some of the questions that have been submitted. Boop, boop, boop. Oh, this is an appropriate one for what we were just talking about. How to use visual aids in PowerPoint. So we're in this world now of online speaking. The rules for offline speaking haven't changed when it comes to visual aids in PowerPoint. So I'm not going to go into detail on that unless someone has a question on it. But when it comes to speaking online, visual aids in PowerPoint can be tricky because it can very easily become all about the PowerPoint and not about you, the speaker. And that is not the most dynamic way to give a presentation. If you're this tiny little face in the corner and we've got this big PowerPoint presentation, PowerPoint is typically quite sparse. You don't have a lot of words on it. And it's not a human being. It's not alive. It's not exciting to watch. And so ideally you want to control your screen. Now, Zoom does not let us control our screen. The user is in control. So when you're in a Zoom meeting and you're doing a PowerPoint, you don't have control about how big your PowerPoint is in relation to your face. Your audience controls that. They get to decide how much of you they want to see and how much of their PowerPoint they want to see. But there are streaming services like StreamYard, for example, and there's a couple of others that allow you to choose where you are. And actually, I think Zoom these days actually Zoom allows you to do a little bit more these days as well. They've done some updates where you can be a larger corner of the screen. So when you do that in Zoom or in StreamYard or anything, you can actually make yourself a certain size if you impose yourself on the PowerPoint. So it's not the same as having presenter view when you are separate from your PowerPoint, but in Zoom, they allow you to kind of put yourself on the PowerPoint in the corner, and you can actually make yourself quite big. So I think I managed to make myself half the screen one time. Then, of course, you need to make your slide so that half the screen, the bit that you're in, doesn't have writing on it. So it takes a bit of planning. But I would really recommend that if you are speaking, your face needs to be there at least 50% of the time. Yeah, sure, you can show a slide if it wants to be on the whole screen and then take it down again. But the human element is that's what people are connecting to. So if you're just a voiceover on a slide, you know, they could do that at home. They can read slides. They can, you know, it's not as dynamic and engaging and human and arresting as a real human's face on camera. So what a lot of people have ended up doing to counteract this is just to have a flip chart next to them and make sure it's flipped so that people can read it. But just use a flip chart or a whiteboard instead of using the technology, because then at least you have control over it. I would recommend anyone who wants to use visual aids, ask yourself, are you hiding behind your visual aid, or is it really necessary? Because I think a lot of speakers use their visual aid to take the focus off of them, but words on a page aren't they're just not that interesting. And so what you're doing is you're automatically making your presentation less dynamic, less engaging. So you want to be the focus. If you only want to give your audience text, don't speak. Give them a book, make an ebook, make something else, some sort of presentation, like even a video, like an animated video, but don't call it speaking, because if you want to be doing this medium, the whole point is that it's a human medium. So I hope that made sense for visual aids. It's something that is still a little bit tricky, especially as we speak more and more online internationally, but I think there are solutions now on how to do it. I really like the one where you can kind of superimpose yourself over your slide, and I'll have blank slides that I'll throw in between so that I can take up more of the screen. And I really like that one myself personally. All right, who's our next speaker? Bah, bah, bah. Who have we got? Clara was the only person who said in the chat that she wanted to speak. So I'm going to just ask in order that people joined. Stephen, did you want to speak today? Steve?
Yes, I'll give it a try. Sure.
All right. What the hell?
Yeah, exactly.
So
Right.
I do have to ask you, Steve, what kind of feedback are you looking for? Feedback, and if you are, what type of feedback would you like?
Yeah, I think what it is, like I stated earlier, coming from this rather rigorous technical background, just this putting this human element into it and telling stories is what I'm going to try to do here in a moment. And it should be very, very easy to just tell a personal story, and yet I find that difficult to put the whole idea. What I want to try to work on is putting the audience in the moment, putting them in the experience that I had, and to make sure that it's not just at a distance, but it's as though they're with me in the moment is the objective of what I'm trying to accomplish here. And I've been noted before that I'm going to present this standing up in view of the camera, but I've been told before that I've got this annoying habit of stepping back when I begin my speeches. So I'm going to try to make a resolve not to create any inappropriate motions, I guess, the way I'm
inappropriate motions. That sounds very exciting. I would recommend, just as a kind of, while I'm thinking about how I am on camera, focusing on kind of bending your knees a little bit more and sitting into the pelvis might help you bring your energy down so that you don't feel, it's often when we're top heavy energy wise that we feel like we need to pace. So if you can bring your energy down a little bit, that might help.
Okay.
Good luck. I'm going
to
switch to
a 5 minute spiel. Is that right?
5 minutes you have to speak. You have 5 minutes.
Okay.
But I'm not going to start them until you're ready. So we'll just let you get your standing desk on. And then I'm going to mute myself. Yeah, we just need, yeah. Perfect, lovely. So I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to start the timer for 5 minutes. You speak your speech, and then I'll give you 5 minutes of feedback afterwards. All right?
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think we've all had this experience where we've gone back to a place where we grew up, where we went to school, just some familiar surroundings from a distant past. And you come back there and things have changed. The place where your school was once located is now knocked down. There's a shopping center there, or the house that you lived in that's owned by someone else looks much smaller than what you ever remember it to be. In fact, it looks like it's in a very decrepit sort of state of affairs. I recently had an experience going back to a place where my family and I lived some 20 years ago, and recently made this trip to Indonesia. We lived in Jakarta for 3.5 years, and just in the past few weeks was back in Indonesia. I went to a conference in Bali, but spent a fair amount of time in Jakarta as well, a place where we had lived. And as the plane was coming in, descending into Jakarta International Airport, the familiar sights outside the window, the paddy fields and the coastline and so on appeared. And in my mind's eye, what I was envisioning was something that I'd experienced many, many times before, was arriving at the airport and being met with, getting off the plane, I would experience this humidity, the sense that I was I was not in Texas anymore. I was in a different country, hearing the gamelan music, the Indonesian music, the smell of spices and cloves that permeated the air, the mahogany woodwork that you would pass by going on to the arrivals hall, and just, I would dread the thought of what lie ahead, simply because it was such an arduous type of experience. First of all, it was a long trudge down a long hallway, and invariably the air conditioning did not seem to work very well. It was just got off of this long, tiring flight, and perspiring and trudging along with my carry-on bag that seemed about 10 times heavier than it was when I departed. But then arriving at the first station is to get a visa on arrival. And if you didn't have a visa, you had to then go to this station, and it was cash only, $25. And if you didn't have it, you were out of luck. You had to ask somebody else. They would make change for you. But in any case, it was just chaotic. Everybody shuffling around to get to the counter to get their visa stamped in their passport. But that was not the end of it. Then really the long wait began. As you moved through the next area to get to the stations where these immigration officers stood, and they seemed to take perverted pleasure in making sure that the line moved as slowly as possible, and picking up your handbag and moving it 5 inches at a time until you finally arrived at the station. And they looked at you in the eye with this very imposing and condescending look on their face and so forth. And in other words, it was a very, very arduous type of experience. As I arrived this particular time, this was what I was envisioning. However, as I got off the plane, I thought I was in a different world. This was not the Indonesia, Jakarta International Airport that I knew before. It was a extremely large terminal arrivals area. It was clean. There was no carpeting. It seemed like there was just this swoosh of efficiency. The air conditioning was operating in a very thorough sort of a way. And I thought I could have been any place in the modern world. This was not the experience that I was expecting. No more of this getting a visa on arrival and the crowds, nor the immigration officers that were standing there. Everything was done with your passport on a glass scanner. A QR code was used for the customs declaration. And in moments I was out of there, this dreaded experience never materialized. A sharp contrast between what I was expecting and what was experienced on that arrival. Likewise, I was going into the city. I would always just dread the thought of what the traffic was going to be like, this congested, chaotic traffic in Jakarta, with just this jumble of large city buses belching out black diesel smoke, the taxis weaving in amongst the traffic, and street vendors and food carts. And furthermore, if it was raining, you'd be stuck in traffic for a long, long time before you got to the hotel. Likewise, in this case, a totally different experience. I was absolutely amazed by the traffic organization this time. The buses were not operating on diesel. They were electric buses on well-defined bus lanes. The cars stayed in their lane. Believe it or not, this is totally astounding. Cars were staying in their lane, and there were none of the street vendors or bicycles or motorbikes. They had a separate lane, demarcated and separated by concrete barriers. So there was just none of this conglomeration of vehicles and chaotic passengers and foot traffic and so forth.
I'm going to stop you there, Steve. That's lovely. How did that feel?
Well, I think I was maybe a little breathy in my delivery. Again, this is the sort of thing what I was trying to do. This is a different type of experience. And I guess what I'm trying to do is be natural in storytelling, and it doesn't come across that way. It seems, again, in a setting, if I was just in a room at a restaurant sort of a thing and just telling this story, it would have come across totally different. So I still think it's.
What would it have been like if we were in a restaurant? How would you have told me?
I would have, one thing that would happen is waiting for feedback from the other person. It would not be a continuous delivery.
Yeah.
There would be this interaction. Somebody might ask a question. How many times you've been to Jakarta, and when was it, and why were you there? All these kinds of things. So just this sort of what you'd call asynchronous delivery is totally different than in a.
That's such a good point. In acting training, we do a lot of monologues. All of your auditions are monologues, essentially. So you're by yourself on stage, and you have to pretend that you're having a conversation. And it's frustrating because you have a page of text, and the whole point is that you're responding to someone else. And I think speaking is very similar in that, if we're lucky, we get to see our audience's faces and we get to respond to their facial expressions, if we're lucky. If we're not lucky, we have to imagine that. And that is a big part of having a relationship with your lens, with the camera that you're speaking to, is knowing who you're talking to and kind of knowing how they would respond. So having a picture in your mind of someone specific, not an audience at large, because it's very difficult to speak to a group, but having in your mind someone receptive that you could be talking to, someone who really enjoys listening to you as an active listener. Imagining them on the other side of the lens, like there's a little tunnel and they're on the other side, and imagining their facial expressions, their questions even, to help you feel like it is a conversation. And that can actually help you with pauses too, because we don't want to just blurt out. You were managing to pause, and it's not that you were doing this, but there is always the danger as a speaker to just blurt out the entire text with no pauses or structure, because we just have this big block of text. And so imagining someone else there kind of going, oh, what next? That can really help you. And you could even, like, as you're planning, and I don't recommend you write out an entire script, because I really don't recommend you do that. But if you're writing out notes, why not write your notes, instead of writing what you want to say, write what kind of questions people would ask. So maybe it's, I want to tell you about this experience I had at Jakarta airport recently. And the question is, how is it different from before? And then you can go into that, and they're like, well, how did it feel? What were you expecting? Questions like, how long, like, how nice were the other people there? What's the weather like? All those kind of questions. You could think of those as you're creating your talk, as you're kind of creating your map for your talk. And that might help, actually. I don't know, could help. Maybe.
Yeah, it's certainly different in a virtual delivery than it is in person, of course, with eye contact and having somebody that you can. I think the general guidance is that you look at a member of the audience for a couple of seconds, establish eye contact, and move on. They're very, very difficult to do here on camera, of course.
Very difficult to do on camera. And in person, you get to actually see that person's facial expression. You make eye contact, you develop some sort of rapport, you get some feedback from them, and then you move on. So yeah, that is a problem with online delivery, just that's inherent in the technology that we have. So yeah, I have a few silly little videos on my YouTube channel on how to build relationship with the lens. If anyone has more questions about that, let me know. As far as other feedback goes, I would cut the beginning, the context at the beginning, and just begin with, I had this experience recently going to Jakarta airport after 20 years. And I think something that you'll find useful in the editing process is, you tend to do this thing, which is very, very human, and we all do it. We tend to want to provide as much context as possible. But when we're storytelling, we want to really pare it down to as little information as is needed. So only the really important stuff is sticking. And so whenever you're asking yourself, should I say that? Just, be like, is it really truly, is it a juicy part of the story? Or is it just something that I want them to know because I think it's interesting? Because we want to create this full picture, but in creating a full picture, we create more distance. And that stops our audience from really relating to us and really getting the feeling of it. So the way we create intimacy is by getting really specific and really personal and using the senses. And you did a lot of using the senses. You could use even more. You talked about the oppressive heat. You talked about the smells of the spices. You could go even further into the senses in just a couple of moments. I think there was a lot of, the other thing is you were trying to describe so many moments. I think just 2 or 3 maximum. So walking off the plane, like when that door opens, and the air rushes in, what that feels like, perhaps. And then maybe standing at the counter trying to get your visa, and then maybe customs, and just cutting out all the in-between, the linear in-between stuff. I love the line, "I'm not in Texas anymore." That was gorgeous. You were using your hands for gestures, and gestures are another thing that can help us create images in our audience's head. The more we use gestures to kind of indicate what we're doing, the more they see what we're doing. So you had your hand luggage and the kind of counter where you were trying to get through the people. Any opportunity that you can use your hands in a more descriptive way, when it's not just this kind of generalized gesturing. So things like the long corridor, or the mahogany pillars, or it takes a bit of thought and it takes a bit of practice. That's almost like a muscle memory. You have to kind of teach your brain to think that way, to think with kind of more indicative gestures. So you can kind of play games with yourself, play charades more often. I don't know. And that'll help bring that, because it's not something we automatically do. You do have to think about it at the beginning, and then it becomes an instinct. Be careful of, and so forth. You tend to use that as a filler. I loved swish of efficiency. That was beautiful as well. You had some lovely language in there. And that also really helps us to feel where you are, is when you're using really rich, interesting language. That does help us a lot. So that, combined with an immediacy and using the word I instead of you, like I walked down the stairs and I saw this, as opposed to you walk down the stairs and then this happens. When I walk down the stairs, it makes it more immediate, it makes it more personal. And the more personal and specific and immediate we can get and kind of clear out, it's almost like we want to shine a spotlight on a moment and clear everything else out, take all the extra furniture out and just focus on this one moment in real detail. I think that might be useful. Any questions on that feedback, Steve?
No, thank you very much. Those are some excellent points. A lot of context, visualizing on camera, someone behind the camera, and not diluting it too much with too many experiences. You just need to go a little bit more specifically with certain experiences. The first person, I pronoun. Again, this is so different than my experience in the technical field, where you tended to remove yourself from the I part was meant to be sort of everything, just this sort of sterile delivery of the technical stuff. Not you're just an agent for delivering it. You're not part of it. You're just they could have just flipped on a tape recorder actually to get the message of what it's about. So it's just different.
Very different contexts, different audiences require different speaking styles. Absolutely. Storytelling is always going to be personal. And I think Yeah, there are elements of storytelling that we can use in technological presentations as well, but those are very specific, and yeah, it is a completely different animal. Absolutely. I do have a suggestion for an exercise for you, Steve. I think what would be really helpful to you is for you to sit in your chair, record yourself, pretend you're having dinner or drinks with someone, and tell them a story. It's going to feel really weird because there's no one else there, but just imagine in your head, like tell yourself which friends are, so and so sitting there and so sitting there, and I'm telling them the story, and like talk yourself through it, just to record yourself, to see what you look like when you are in that relaxed state. And then you can kind of go, okay, well, how can I bring some of that into my presentations? Okay. That's my suggestion for an exercise for you.
Thank you. Very good.
Thank you very much. Oh, I forgot to remove the pen out of here. Oh, okie dokie. All right, so another question while our potential speakers can think about whether or not they'd like to speak. I'm going to look up another question from what's been submitted. Oh, again, this one works well from what we've just been talking about. Oh, excuse me, I'm just going to drink first. For someone who is very comfortable speaking in free flow, kind of just improvising, and then they want to get to a more polished place. I'm paraphrasing because the way that they put the sentence was a little bit. How do we do that? So how do we go from the kind of speaker who is very much off the cuff, kind of improvised, but not always super structured or super clear or super on time? How do we go into a more polished way of speaking without totally relearning the whole thing? Which is an excellent question, because I know a lot of speakers, when they want to be polished, they will write a script and they will memorize it. And I think that is, I don't like to use the word wrong. I think it's inefficient. And I think it's very dangerous because it can leach all of the life out of a talk. So what I do with my speakers is typically I don't let them write the whole thing out ever, never word for word, because once you have it written down, you want to commit to that. And there's always this kind of like, oh, but I want to do it that way. And you're living in the past and it's not useful. So I would rather have the talk as some sort of living thing, but we do need to polish it, and we do need to be able to be on time. We do need to be structured. So how do we go from this just very conversational stream of consciousness to something that is structured, but still alive and still fresh and still very much you and conversational? I've got a couple of pieces of advice for this. If you need to be on time a lot, I would practice speaking for that amount of time. And when the buzzer goes, stop. You will eventually get an internal sense of how long that time is. So if you know you always need to speak for a minute, or you always need to speak for 5 minutes, when you're practicing, time yourself. And when the buzzer goes, you stop. Don't keep going after the buzzer goes, because then you won't learn that time. And so that can create an internal sense of how long you've got, which does help a lot with the structure. When it comes to organizing your thoughts, preparation is very important. You don't need to write it all out, but you do need to make some decisions before you go in. What am I going to say? What am I not going to say? How long do I have? How much depth am I going to go into? I always like to use the power of threes. Actually, I have a Facebook Live on napkin planning, I think, which might be useful on this. But yeah, so if you're on my Facebook group, and actually I don't think we have the link easily available, but I have a Facebook group where I do a Facebook Live every week. And so I do like a different topic. So one of those I think recently was on napkin planning. So check that out. But yeah, so the power of threes, just make a decision of, I'm going to talk about these 3 things. And then if you need 3 things under them, if you try and do 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, often you won't be able to remember all of them. But if you always do 3, there's something about the number 3 in the human mind. Your audience will hang on to it really nicely. You'll usually be able to remember it. So when you are practicing, and I like to practice instead of almost rehearsing, I just like to practice my muscle memory. So I'll just give myself little assignments. I'll be like, okay, I'm going to talk on this topic for 5 minutes, and I'm going to talk about these 3 things, and let's see how I go. And that trains your brain to edit in the moment. It trains your mouth and your brain to kind of work together at the same time. So you're practicing speaking out loud. You're actually doing the thing instead of getting ready to do the thing, which is really important. As speakers, you don't become a better speaker by writing things down. You become a better speaker by speaking and doing that over and over again and giving yourself little tweaks every time. So what I like to do if I've got a big, like, complicated talk and I don't want to do it all stream of consciousness, I will create little milestones for myself. I'll create chapter headings, questions, like we were talking with Steve, so that you have structure in your stream of consciousness, but it's still a stream of consciousness. If I have 5 questions that I'm answering, each PowerPoint slide is a question, I don't have to think about what comes next. I just need to answer the question. And that becomes a very nice, easy way for me to structure my talk. Or I can have 5 milestones or 3 miles. I was just talking about 3s, 3 milestones, 3 questions. And it allows you to make things up on the spot. It allows you to improvise. It allows you to be spontaneous, but you've got this structure of the questions or, you know, your topics. And yeah, just by doing it over and over again. And then, you know, if you're interested in how to get that really polished, come talk to me, because I have a very specific process that I call distillation, which we improvise and you improvise and you make the container smaller. You improvise, you make the container smaller until the container is so exact that you're still improvising, but it's always 18 minutes. And you always hit the right points. And that does come from repetition, but it's not nearly as much repetition as you would have to go through to memorize a script and then make it sound real again. That is so much work. It is so much more work than training your natural instincts to just kind of, you know, you're almost just like a sheepdog, just kind of moving them a little bit in this direction, a little bit in that direction, instead of, you know, reinventing the wheel. So that's my advice on that, the difference between speaking spontaneously and speaking in a polished way. The last piece, don't be scared to pause. Don't be scared to stop and think about what you're going to say first. The main reason we use filler words, the main reason we go off topic, the main reason we speak too much is because we're not letting ourselves think before we speak. So giving yourself a second to just go, what am I going to say? I'm going to say this. Pauses are not bad. Your audience isn't going to run away. They can be really useful for a number of reasons, but don't be scared. Don't be scared to pause. All right, that's enough of me talking. Someone else needs to talk for a while. Margaret, do you want to? Oh, I see your hand is up. I love it.
Yes, I would like to talk because, you know, like I have to leave by 1:30. So,
Well, I'm sorry I didn't know that earlier, but we can go now. Do you want feedback?
Yes,
Okay.
I want a lot of feedback, but I think right now, actually, what I am sharing is that I feel it is too serious.
Okay.
So I mean, you know, it doesn't have that conversational style. I would love to have the conversational style, but right now I think because I am in finance, and so I am trying to help people in their financial situation, and so I think the topic make me go more serious, and so I wanted to be more, you know, conversational and then like telling more stories, but I think I am not doing it right.
I think I can help. So I have some ideas already, but I'm not gonna give you ideas before you speak. I'll give you your 5 minutes. I'll take some notes, and then I think I have some ideas to help you out. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to set the timer for 5 minutes, and whenever you're ready.
Okay. My niche is a single professional woman, age 45 to 60, and empty nester who have money and would like to leave a legacy for her children. And then my title of the speech is Stress-Free Financial Planning to Leave Your Legacy. I will help them with an assessment first, and then create a clear, actionable plan to grow their wealth and reduce the debt and maximize compound interest, minimize tax liability, and protect themselves and their family so they will not be overwhelmed and can focus on enjoying life and making memories with their loved ones. First of all, why am I even talking about that elimination? Because, like a lot of Americans, they have credit card debt and they don't pay off everything in cash. And so I wanted to find out from you, do you want to pay over 10% on your interest in your debt? And many times the interest rate is 20, 30, or sometimes even 40%. And so I suggest that you identify and prioritize your debt and then find out which one is the highest debt first, and then you try to pay that one off first. And so you don't have that burden on your shoulder. So even when you have money, and if you can cut down on your credit card debt and your other loans or whatever, then you can use that money to reprioritize and do something better, to invest. Now, I understand a lot of you may not see the importance of automatic savings and investment for financial discipline. Like many times, like when you have your paycheck, you just spend it out all on your what you have to do. So if you automatic put some money in a saving account that you cannot touch, then it will help you out and make life much better for you. How about protecting yourself and your family with life insurance? Have you understand that there is a life insurance plan called 7702? And that is special because the IRS is protecting that. And it allows people to get cash, that can help them. And if they need money to spend or for their home or for children's education, they can borrow money if they have enough cash in that policy without really worrying about going to bank and get high interest loan. So I feel a lot of millionaires, they are using this strategy to help themselves. And if you can make use of it, why not? I can tell you a lot of examples that people are trying to get money out from their cash policy when they invested a lot in it, and then they have money to do whatever they want. And then if they don't pay back the money, yes, they will get less when it is time for them to take it out. But if they pay it back, then they can have the original policy amount. So I know that there are a lot of excuses for people saying, hey, I'm young, I don't need a life insurance policy. Or, hey, my children can take care of themselves, and why do I need to get life insurance policy? They can take care of me. I'm going to let you know. You don't know right now. If your children are grown, you are empty nester. They all have their own family or their own lifestyle to take care of. They might not have chance to help you as much. So I suggest that if you have money, yes, you can take your money and make arrangement for some travel function for your whole family, for your children included. And then you guys can have fun and can go visit places that you wanted to go without worrying about, hey, who's going to pay the bill? Because you are paying for it. And then
Lovely. I'm going to
do
stop you
you,
there, my dear. I had trouble
oh,
with the timer, but I'm pretty sure it's about 5 minutes. How did that feel?
I still feel that I am too serious. I don't know. I
It's
think
okay.
it is hard for people to like, because it's like I am trying to attract my ideal clients, which are
Mhm,
those women, the women that I'm talking
mhm.
about. But I don't know. Right now, it seems like no matter what I say, it seems like finance sometimes is really
It's a
hard for
tricky
people to
subject,
process.
for sure. It is a tricky subject, and I've definitely got some ideas for you that will help you feel more conversational and also take a little bit of the pressure off, because I think your passion is so obvious. Like, you obviously care so much about these people that comes through very much, and that might be part of why you're feeling like you're very serious, because you're like, oh, I want to help you. And I'm really getting that feeling of like, oh, I want to help you so bad. So which is great. I mean, lean into it, why not? So yeah, so I have some ideas to help you out. The very first question I would ask you is, who are you speaking to and where are you speaking to them? Because you started off talking about them, and then you switched to you, and so it made it kind of clear to me that I didn't know where I was supposed to be. I didn't know who I was supposed to be. So when you're speaking, unfortunately, if you want to do it well, you have to change it a little bit every time you speak, because you're speaking to different people. So if you were at a networking event and you are speaking just to a whole bunch of people who aren't necessarily your ideal target market, then you're saying, then it's very much third person. These are the people that I work with. I help them with this. If you know anyone who is like this, please let me know. So it's like a third person thing. But if you are talking to your ideal client, then it's, hey, I want to talk to you about something. I know maybe this is going on with you right now, but this is important. So you need to know for yourself and be very clear who you're talking to, where you are, and what the context is. So is this a conversation? Is this part of a bigger conversation? Is this a presentation that you're doing? Is this an introduction? Because all of those things are going to dictate how much you say. Right now, I feel like you're trying to fit a 1 hour talk in 5 minutes. You're giving us all your content, everything that you know. And it's too much. Like, as I'm listening, I'm like, this is all great information, but I'm overwhelmed. Like, it's too much for me. It's too much for me to take in. So one thing that you're not just giving information to your clients. You even said it was stress-free. You're taking the stress away from them. So the way that you talk about the things that you do for your clients also needs to feel like you're doing the work, not them. And so we don't need to go into too much detail. We don't need to overwhelm them with lots of ideas. We can focus on one problem that they have and say, look, this is your main problem. And depending on who you're talking to, they may have different pain. Like, everyone has different pain problems. Like, maybe their pain problem is, I thought my kids were going to look after me, and now they've decided they've told me they're not going to. Or maybe my main problem is, I've just never been good with money and I'd love to save and I don't know how. Whatever that kind of top of mind problem is, that might be different depending on who you're talking to. But you can focus on that one thing. And if you can make that one thing go away, they don't really care how. They don't really care how you do it. They just want you to do your magic. So you don't need to explain your process quite so much. Does that make sense?
Yes, but you know what the thing is, for myself, I ran out of my warm customer. Like
Okay.
people
Yeah.
that know me,
Mhm.
that trust
Yeah.
and can come with me. I am talking to all cold client, and
Mhm.
I am to do it on social media or on ads and things like that. I know that, like when people talk to me, they say, oh, it's too long. Don't talk 5 minutes. Talk 1 minute or less. and then tell them, like I understand the 3 important steps that you have to do. I know that. But then the thing is, because today I have 5 minutes, so I add more.
Well, what I
to-
would do in those 5 minutes, and I don't think there's anything wrong with sharing content. I think having an educational piece is wonderful, especially for a 5-minute talk. The way I would structure it, though, is you gotta get them to know, like, and trust you first. You can't start with teaching because they don't know who you are and they don't know why they should care. So in any talk, and this is for everybody actually, in any talk, we always want to begin. The first thing you got to do is be relatable, build rapport somehow. So the very first thing that I have to do is I have to get my audience to want to talk to me. And so that may be about making a joke about finances, that may be about explaining your struggle. It's usually something personal. It's usually something more human, more relatable. Like it might be a story, when I was younger, I spent all this money on this thing and I went into debt and I was paying 20% on the debt and I didn't know how to deal with it. And, and then I found this and, whatever it is, just something either funny or relatable to get your audience to be like, oh, I actually want to listen to this person. That's the first thing. Then the second thing is, why should they care? So this is when you're kind of poking their problem. Maybe they're concerned about having enough money to take care of themselves in their old age, or maybe they're concerned about not being able to make their car payments, whatever it is, or they really want to go on holiday but they can't afford it. You poke the pain. That's why they want to listen to you. And then you provide. So I have so many solutions for you today. I've only got 5 minutes, so I'm going to tell you the top 3. And the first one is this, the second one, and then so that keeps you can still share content, but you're not sharing all of your content. Choose 3 things. And then the other thing was, you said right at the end, which I really liked, millionaires use this strategy. You could use that as part of your talk. These are strategies that millionaires use. Why not you? That could even be your talk title. 3 strategies that millionaires use to save money. Why aren't you using them? Something like that, just for fun. Yeah. And then my last kind of piece of advice would be, don't be scared to stop talking every now and again, because right now I'm feeling your passion, I'm feeling your energy, like you're just going and going and going and going. But again, it's like drinking from a fire hose. Like, it's too much for me. So if you can get excited, speak quickly, wonderful, speak really fast, talk about this thing, and then take a breath. And then I'm going to talk about something else. And then I'm going to talk really quickly again because I'm really excited. I'm going to talk about this thing and it's so important and you need to understand this. It's so important. And then I'm going to take a breath. So you don't need to go, 100 miles an hour the whole time. If you stop in between, it gives them a chance to kind of go, oh, yeah, that's right. What a good idea. It gives them time to think to themselves. Also gives you time to look at your notes so that when you're looking, so that when you're speaking, you can spend more time looking at the lens, which again is going to make more rapport. It's going to make us feel more connected to you if you can look at the lens when you speak. So was any of that helpful?
Yes, very helpful. I know that for me, for the TV or for video, I am only going to do it for 1 minute. And then so 1
Great.
minute is, I cannot talk so much, and then like it has to be more concentrated.
Yeah.
So otherwise nobody will listen to me.
Well, no, that's not true. I think it's just that you really need to make sure that you get those first pieces in before you launch into teaching. So don't jump into teaching too quickly. Even if you have only 1 minute, make sure you're still building a relationship and why they care before you go into the teaching. I think you can do more than 1 minute. Starting with 1 minute is really good. It's great practice. It's doable. It feels doable. Yeah. So it's a really great way to start. But I don't think you need to stick to that necessarily.
You have maybe the first 8 to 10 seconds to see whether they wanted to continue to listen to you.
Yeah.
If you pop that and then they scroll on, they don't listen to you.
Exactly.
So I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to post my video on social media. And so that's why I understand that I cannot be long-winded. If I'm long-winded, as long as the first few seconds, I cannot attract them, give them a hope, they will leave. So that's why that's why it is totally different. And people nowadays with their listening, people are not having that much time.
Well, especially if you're trying to catch them on the scroll. I mean, that is the hardest. That really is the hardest. You've chosen the most difficult thing for yourself, to try and stop a scroll. That's a very difficult thing to do. So I would recommend, if speaking is something that you want to do more of, and I really recommend, if you've run out of warm market, speaking is the way to go, because people get to know you, they get to know your energy, they get to understand you. Speaking is the best way to create more warm leads. But
that
speaking and
I try.
Speaking and no, but throwing a video up on social media is not speaking. That's advertising. Speaking is going on people's podcasts, having conversations, going networking where you can really relate to people. So there's lots of people who do financial podcasts that want to interview people. So you don't have to have a talk. You can just answer questions. You don't need to have something planned, as long as you know what you do, which I think you do. They're going to ask you questions and you answer the questions, and it's very natural. It's a conversation. Podcasts are so good for that. And then also just things like, like even Facebook Lives where you're talking to someone else, you bring someone else on and you can feature them. Anytime you can have a conversation, people are much more likely to watch that. And they're often going to see it specifically. So you're not trying to interrupt them while they're scrolling, because that is the hardest. You've really chosen the most difficult path for yourself there. So I would recommend, talk to people, go to networking events, online, offline. Talk to Max. Can you make a note in the follow-up email that I send? I'm going to send some resources on where you can find podcasts, because there's quite a few. There's a few really good ones. So I'll send you that in the follow-up email. And just make friends, chat to people. That's the best way to do it.
That's why I am so happy that I got onto your station. And then I started saying, oh, this is so good. And you have open house and you let people talk. So this is the first time I speak in your program. But I am so grateful that I found you.
Oh, I'm very glad. Well, good. Stick around. There's more coming. I know you have to leave today, but I've got a newsletter and all sorts of things. So please stay in touch on that dreaded social media, and we'll definitely help you out.
With you, because you have so much to share.
Well, thank you.
And it's just like, even if I'm not speaking, I am listening to the other people, then I can learn.
We learn so much. Yeah.
From what you give to them. And it is so good. And that's why today when I'm speaking, I am trying to think of, how should I present? Because, I forgot that totally that it is 5 minutes. I forgot the 5 minutes. And so mine says short. And so I have to gather things to put it together.
You don't have to fill the 5 minutes. There's no rule to say you have to finish the 5 minutes. There's no rule there. You could have just spoken for 1 or 2. It would have been absolutely fine. Anyway, thank you so much. Thank you for coming, and I appreciate you trusting me. And I'll definitely see more of you, Margaret. I think there's lots that you can do with what you've got, and you're definitely passionate about it, which is great.
Yeah, I'll stay about 10 more minutes, and then I'll be going. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. All right, we got one more question, and then potentially one more speaker. We'll see. What do we got here? Let's grab a good one. Oh, this is a good one. For people who feel like their voice is boring. So I had someone write in saying, my voice is all one tone. How do I add variety? How do I add interest and make my speeches more dynamic? So there were 2 things that will create a monotone voice. A voice where everything kind of sounds the same and your voice is very boring. There's 2 reasons for that. The first reason is if you are really tense. So I'm really tense and I'm really nervous and like everything in me is tense and I'm not really moving very much, then my voice is going to get very flat and very monotone because everything is tense. Like I'm not breathing, I'm not moving. That's one of the reasons why you might become monotone. Another reason is the opposite. You might be totally collapsed. And I don't mean relaxed. Relaxed and collapsed are not the same thing. Relaxed is still open, it's still energized, you can still move. Collapsed is, and I'm not really breathing anymore, and I can't really move because everything has just kind of folded in on itself. And then my voice gets very monotone again. So it's the two extremes. I either have so much tension that I can't move, or I have collapsed so far that I cannot move. There's no flow happening in my breath or my body. The things that bring vocal variety into your body are the way that you breathe and the way that you move. So if I want my voice to be more exciting and I don't want to go up at this point and then go down, you don't want to choreograph it. That would be terrible. That would be so bad. Don't do that. But if you want to bring more life into your voice, one of the things you can do is gesture more. Often, if we're standing quite still and our arms are by our sides and we're a little bit nervous, we can tense up without really noticing that we're doing it. And so that tense monotone will creep in. If you are moving your arms, you're reminding your body that, like, hey, we can move. And hopefully it's also reminding your body that you can breathe. And so you're bringing energy into your voice, because your speaking instrument is your whole body. We're not talking heads. Your whole body is used in the way that you make sound, in the way that you create sound. So if we can gesture, and especially if we can gesture kind of using the whole body, not that you're necessarily going to lift your knees or anything, but thinking of gesture as being a full body experience instead of, T-Rex arms or something like that. If I can gesture from my shoulders out from my heart, then I'm using most of my body to create these gestures. And as soon as I say this versus that, it creates a little bit of vocal variety. I'm not going crazy on my vocal variety, but as soon as I go, it was a long way away, and then boom, this happened. Your voice is going to respond to the movements that you are making. And especially when we have a list, it's this and then that and then this. As soon as you're orienting yourself in space, your voice is going to respond that way. Your body's going to respond that way. If it's warmed up and you're not holding on to chronic tension. If you've done a small voice warm up, I've got a 10-minute warm up. If you actually, Max, I'm going to just send the 10-minute warm up to everyone who's on the call on the follow up. I'll give that to you because it's a really useful, just full body, wake it up so that you can speak. If your body's awake and you're gesturing, it's going to bring life into your voice. The other thing that really brings life into your voice is breathing fully. A lot of us are just very shallow breathers. And so if I'm only letting my breath into my shoulders, then again, I'm creating some tension, I'm creating a disconnect, and I'm not really bringing a lot of life into my voice. When I let myself breathe all the way down to my pelvic floor, I know that your lungs are up here, but you feel the consequences of your breath all the way down to your pelvic floor, because the muscles are all moving against each other. So if I can feel my breath all the way into my bum, essentially, I feel it in the chair underneath me, then I have so much more space for my vocal variety to come out. And so sometimes I'll breathe deep and something will come, out of there. And sometimes it comes from further up. But what I'm doing is I'm allowing myself to access my whole instrument. And when we do warm-ups, especially resonance warm-ups, then you can really start to play with, opening up the space in the back of your throat, opening up, your facial mask even, and then you can start doing character voices and all sorts of fun stuff. That's more advanced. But just to bring more life into your voice, those two things. So gesture, let yourself be open and alive and relaxed, and breathe all the way down. Every time, even if it's a small breath, just make sure it goes all the way down. Because if we're shoulder breathing, that creates immediate tension, and we've only got so much breath. And so because I only have so much breath to spend, my body knows that I'm not able to spend it on variety because I have to get the words out. Whereas if I have more breath to spend because I've breathed more deeply, then there's so much more room to play. So those are my advice pieces to any of you who feel like you have more monotone voices. All righty. Adam, do you want to speak, or are you just here listening? It's absolutely fine either way.
To be honest, I'm new to all the speaking thing because I'm I'm basically a shy one, to be honest. I've been trying to get into speaking for quite a while.
Ooh.
To be honest, it has been difficult for me because there's been a lot of like speak up groups, programs, educational stuff, and everything else. And I've heard, no offense to you, I'm not saying to begin with, but I've heard a load of BS from a lot of people saying you need to do this, you need to do that, you
There's
need
a
to pay
lot
for
out
this,
there.
you need to do that. But for me, I've been really trying to find the right program that's going to help me because, in spite of what's matter, I have.
Oh, we just lost you. Oh no, you were just getting to the interesting bit. Come back, Adam. Oh no. Is it me? I'm still here, right? Yeah. Okay, good. I'm here. We'll hope he comes back. I'm gonna take one moment, please. I'm gonna take some water. Hope he comes back. Hey, there he is.
Sorry, my missus was just calling. No, what it is, I have 3 disabilities. I've got a learning disability because my reading, writing, my spelling isn't exactly a format. Plus, in spite of that, I also have a complex difficulty need when I can't express my sorry. Hang on, I know. It's very difficult to express my vocal cords when it comes to my wording.
Okay.
Because what it is, I can process the information, but I can't get the words correctly where I want to speak out because I speak more, as people put it, posh and too technical because I come up with words that don't even exist. But inside to that, I do get frustrated with myself when I'm not able to speak clearly to a lot of people. And for the last couple of years, I've been asking like support and help because I got asked a question that says, what do you want out of speaking? What do you want to achieve? And I says, I want to get my voice heard like everyone else does. And I says, well, what do you actually want from this? I says, I started rethinking. I thought, you know what I really want out there are 2 things. I want to make aware that regardless of what I've seen on Facebook and Instagram and all these posts, from no offense to disability people that whatsoever, or children that have got it, I've seen all these people post that they're in wheelchairs, they're all medically ill, and fair enough, they're doing well for themselves. But I haven't seen a single one of these people go on saying, oh, I've got this disability, I'm proud of it because I can share it with the world. But I've seen it. I've seen people with Down syndromes be bodybuilders. I've seen other people. I'm thinking, that's not for me. I want to see people like myself that have disabilities reach out and speak that we have a right to exist and we want to help out more. People can talk about the same nonsense all the time, but my biggest question for what I was faced with, I wanted to basically share my views, but also what my goal for now is that I want to help people in my situation that are on disability benefits, that are living on the streets, that have never been given an opportunity. And slightly, I have gone out of my way, but I've had to redirect it because I got asked the same question, what do you want to bring to the world? I says, okay, I want to help people, families, business owners, anyone that have got disabilities or children living with it, or families that are struggling, they don't know how to process the information to support them for long term. So that's my goal. And my speaking is quite there, but I'm attending my first public speaking event near my end anyway, near Lancashire, because I'm in the UK anyway, because I know you're in the US. And,
well, I'm actually in South Africa at the moment, but yeah.
Oh, right, fair enough. I mean,
we're only 2 hours apart right now.
Fair enough. Well, what I'm trying to do is that I'm very fearful of reaching out to crowds because I'm more used to Zooms now. And trying to share my view and everything hasn't been the easiest. And plus, I'm a father to 5, and for the last, well, I'm 39, well, I'm actually 40, to be honest. And for the last 25 years, I've been bullied, picked on, prosecuted. I've been to networking events, I've been to social groups, I've been to everything that's been around these years. And I still get treated like unfair. And I went to a networking event a while back. This is going back probably 3 or 4 years ago, and I was trying to get into property. And this guy did a speaking event, and he said to me, I said, I can relate to you. He says, how can you relate to me? Because you're not. No, I can relate to you because you spent the last 20 years with your father before he passing, and you made passive income from doing what you did. And he says, I have a mum that's like that, and I don't know how long she's got left to go, and I want to know. And he says, have you got? No. I says, I don't have much money. I'm just getting there. It's just taking me a fair bit to get. And I said to him, do you think anyone with my difficulty, my learning disabilities, could get anywhere? And he's a millionaire. He lives in Monaco now, and I won't name names because I see him all the time, which I haven't got the proof to verify what he said. But he said to me, he whispered in my ear, and he said, people with disabilities, people that have children, should not be allowed to exist or have families because they corrupt, they drain the society of system and money. Yeah, that's what he said to me, because I spent the last 25 years because I've had social services, I've had so much going on. It's taken me 15 years to prove everyone wrong that I'm a capable parent, even though it's difficult at times. And I think
it's always going to be difficult being a parent.
Yeah, but my 5 children, I've only got one that has a unique mind. He's quite intelligent. I've got 4 other kids that have got disabilities, and it's hard to balance each one because one has different complex needs, and it has been difficult. But I think in that time frame when he said that, I was depressed for 6 months. And in fairness, there's a lot of people in my area that don't know that I kind of self-harmed myself quite a lot because I was so bad I couldn't express it. So it's taken me probably a good 4 years, and as a dummy, because I don't understand how things are, I spent a lot of money on different programs, everything, and I've not been able to focus, regardless of what I've been put through. I've not been able to find my purpose on what I want until I learn how. You know what? I've got all these ideas, and my brain can't process like what everyone's, because for me, this is far-fetched. My biggest dream is that I want to be the first person with disabilities to reach £1 billion, even though it's a bit far-fetched dream like everyone else does. But that's my goal, because I'd rather use 500 million of that to help out people on benefits, even though it may not last long. At least it showed that I've taken that consideration. It's a dream, but for me,
absolutely. And why not?
I've got loads of dreams and loads of ideas, but I think someone kept on telling me, first step is get your speaking, get your confidence, speak to new people. Because before I even noticed your group and your other groups wise, I think I joined a few other groups from the US, speaking ones, because they're all professionals and they've got the capability to know. And I haven't been on as much because it has been difficult with a lot going on. But
so how can I help? How can I help you, Adam? What can I do for you?
I just want to know my kind of speaking forte. Is there anything that, with what I'm trying to teach and what I want to learn about my disabilities, is it going to benefit anyone out there? Because I've got probably, I've got 25 years of experience because I've got it anyway. But the thing is, I may not have children that have all the disabilities because I want to share that experience with other people. Because from people in this group, you could end up having a child that has disabilities and you don't understand how it works or how it works. So for me, I want to help people that are in that situation. And for me, I want to know how to get my wording correctly out, but make it more engaging, because I've not had the best videos because I've probably done a few videos and I've kind of utilized AI technology to twerk it and pizzazz it up just to see what it's like. But
my advice to anyone who has anything that makes them distinctive would always be to lean into it. Never try and pretend you don't have this thing that makes you distinctive. And especially if things like writing things down, that kind of thing, is not your forte. Do you know how much I have to convince my speakers not to write things down? It is a gift that you struggle to write things down because you can just speak and you'll find your way of doing it. I mean, not saying that just speaking is easier, because I know you have the articulation thing, but learning how to do it that way could be such a strength for you. There is no formula. There is no one way of doing it. And I get really frustrated when speaking coaches say my way is the only way, because that's garbage. There are as many ways to have a speaking career as there are speakers. You just got to do what's right for you. And only you know that. Yeah, there's lots of things that work, and yeah, try them to see if they work for you. But at the end of the day, it's your life, it's your business, and you know what works best, what feels best for you, and what works best for your specific clients. I think there are so many people who could benefit from what you have to say. I think advocacy, I've seen a lot recently, actually, especially in the States, people just getting fed up with the system and trying to spread the word. They've gone through this difficulty either advocating for themselves or for their, for a dependent of some sort. And they're speaking on it now because it's so important that this information gets out there. So I think there's a large audience for you. I think also, just from the inspirational point of view, anyone who's overcome anything, especially if you're preaching preaching's the wrong word, but especially if you're sharing kind of tolerance and acceptance, as opposed to, this like rags to riches story, which we're all getting a bit sick of. Why can't we just embrace diversity? Why can't that be enough? I think there's a huge audience for you. I think you being slightly different in some ways is always going to be an advantage. It might feel like a disadvantage at the time, but it's going to help you stand out. And so I think getting very clear on who your audience is, who you want to help, how you want to help them, and then where to find them and where to speak in order to find them, and interviewing them. The best thing I can recommend, if you're feeling a lack of clarity around your audience or your topic or what to say, interview people. Find the people that you want to help and ask them questions. There is nothing more useful than interviewing your favorite clients, even if they're not clients, like people that are like, oh, I would love to help you. Interview them, ask them questions. What are their pain points? What are the troubles that they're going through? What do they wish someone could do for them? And then you'll have a very good idea of how you can help. And that, I think, can be very, very useful. Does that help at all?
I think it is, actually, because I've had a few ideas recently, and with my brain where I process things, it is difficult because I keep on having more ideas before I even get a chance to finish the first one. And the one thing I have struggled recently is because I need money to support my family, and you have to waste, well, as what's the saying goes, you have to make money in order to spend money to gain more money, and concept-wise. You've got to have loads, and I've got too many ideas. I keep putting down, yeah, I'll do this, and then when I get to it, I do half of it, and then, oh, okay, then I've got to basically call it quits and start on something else, even though I haven't forgotten about it. For me, for what I wanted to do was, I wanted to do my public speaking, get my wording out there, and then build a podcast, and probably podcast course, because I want to interview people. I want to make it crystal clear, because I've got a few ideas. Because I work as a bin man for my local council in my area, and they're a private company, and I don't want to put things complicated. And I've been looking on one of those those sites where it's cheap-based products, and I found a few little portable podcast equipment, like speakers and mini cameras. And I was trying to come up with my own podcast, like A Life as a Bin Man, and then I was going to do something to do with people with disabilities as well. Trying to make sure, because I think these are the concepts that not everyone's aware of, and even though it might not get me anywhere, and it's not like forte with the right forte that one of people listen, but it's one of those things. Plus, I was looking at doing my own book, and I was speaking to this person, and they said to me, says, oh, yeah, we help people with benefits, but the only commitment you have to do is that you have to pay your commitment fee to write your story. And she said, I said, how do I go about it if I want to work? Well, all right, it's simple. Write down or memorize or do something like a video biography for yourself on what you want to, what your books on topics want to be. And then once you've done your speaking, you've gained your audience, and you've gained that that consistency, that you're more comfortable with doing your own book, and then when you've got some experience in doing what you want to do, then probably write two books, one about life living on disabilities, and then see how that goes, and then go to the next one and say, write an autobiography about yourself, what you've gone through, how you've gone through this stuff. Because how does that work? And they said, well, that's how most publishers do it. They do a normal book about standard stuff, and then when they know that they've got to a point, they'll write an autobiography about themselves and how I got here, what happened, and the basic details. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's great, because I've got a few book ideas, living with disabilities, and then finding out that I'm well, to be honest, I'm a carer to my mum who's terminally ill. I'm also a carer to my partner who has dyslexia, and she also has mental health issues. So she just find it difficult with people on Facebook and everything like judgmental and everything else. And she's got body dysmorphia, that she hates her own body. And I do try my best. It does help. And plus, but the one thing that really makes her stand out from anyone else is like, she's a committed mum, and she's doing well for herself. And I think, for fairness, from what I'm learning, I even said to my missus, I says, well, if I get into business, why don't you come and join me? She says, what do you mean? Come and join me, do like a podcast, do something about speaking who you are, what you do. You don't have to share about your past, present, your past information about everyone. Just express who you are. And she said to me, well, I've got a business idea. And I says, okay, what? I says, what is this? I says, look, I'm not into business, babe. And I says, look, at the end of the day, I said to her, look, do something that benefits you. I says, well, speak about do a group, do a support group.
I'm going to have to stop you, Adam, because you are so full of ideas. This is a wonderful conversation, but we are running out of time. So I'm going to suggest that you and I get together and we have a one-on-one call, because you've got so many great ideas. So I'm going to send you a follow-up email, and let's get together and just chat for a while about all your ideas. I'd love to hear about them, and I'd love to help in any way that I can. So we'll book a one-on-one call, you and me, and we'll have a chat about this.
Yeah, that's fine. My apologies for going over, because
no, not at all. It's exciting stuff. It's very interesting. So I want to make sure that we do give it the time, because it's important. But we are gonna wrap up today's event. So I just want to thank everyone here, especially those of you who stuck around to the end. I know I call it a drop-in so people can drop in and out, but thank you to those of you who stuck around, because it's always nice to have people to speak to. I do want to just ask, we're going to go round one more time, and I'm going to ask each person just the number one thing that they got out of today, whatever it was, whatever stands out for you. Clara, I'm going to ask you first. What is the number one thing that stood out for you from today's event?
Well, as avoid talking with your shoulders, which I need to remember all the time.
Let your shoulders go on holiday. Yes.
So that's it.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Clara.
Thank you, Danielle.
Steve, what was one thing your favorite thing from today?
I think the tips on speaking on camera, that was one thing, visualizing the audience on the other side, as well as what you pointed out to Clara as well about moving the hands in and out of the camera. I think that that on-camera presentation part of it was pretty important to me to learn and get some insights on.
When you're standing, you don't have to worry about that so much, because you're far away enough that you can move your arms wherever you like. It's just when you're in a smaller frame that you have to worry about it.
Yeah. Again, not having a live audience in front of me that's a different, and delivering it as though you're speaking to someone that cares about what you're saying is the hard part.
But it's like building that relationship is so important. Lovely. Thank you so much. So Adam, what was your favorite thing from today's event?
I think the basics of, because I take on board what people are saying, learning from everyone else. And it's nice meeting you, even though I've not been in much as an engager. I think you've given me some pointers. I know. So one of those things, I think I've taken the idea that, for me, I think I'm going to take a step back and do one thing at a time without overwhelming myself. And maybe when we do this next call, I can get to a point where I can be more comfortable talking to Claire and Steve and Max and a few others. So you feel like I'm not one of those loners that stay out of the way. So anyway, it's nice meeting you all anyway.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Adam. And Max, I'm going to put you on the spot. What was your favorite thing about today's events?
Well, I think I most enjoyed like seeing all the different speaking styles and all the different ways like we can help. I like to help all the things. Yeah, like all these the different different countries, different walks of life, different careers, and everybody's trying to better themselves, and I like that. I think that's really cool.
Aw, thanks, Max. That's lovely. And for me, yeah, just I love it. I love that there are people who are here who keep coming back, and I see their improvement, and it makes my heart so full. And I love that there are new faces every time, and I get to see them be courageous and, you know, trust me and trust us enough to speak and share their story. So I'm so grateful every time I run this event. It's such a joy. I feel so honored that that you all come and share with me. So we'll do it again soon, probably October, maybe October-ish. I will send out an email just discussing any resources that I was talking about. I'll include those in the email so you can look out for that. And yeah, and if you're watching the replay and you have questions, throw those questions my way, book a free needs assessment with me, just hop on the phone. I'm always happy to chat. And until next time, thank you all so much, and I'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye.
See you soon. Bye.